Alrighty, excellent. So this is going to be a video of a continuation of the update of the HDPb heavy build. So this was a build which I've talked about priorly, basically a super heavy double cannon build, which I was primarily using in PvE in the daily raids, using the cohort cabin. Basically with the intent of being as absolutely beefy as possible, being able to soak up damage in place of the objective or of other teammates. So I did priorly have another update video where this was part of it. It wasn't the entire thing. There was also a rework / recreation of another thicker spider build from a variant I had earlier. But in any case, this is a continuation of that. It did end off with the build looking kind of like this. So the inspiration for that was, as is in the comments, by MKW_777. It's a Reddit post. I think probably the week before I made that post. They posted this bad boy, which uses armored tracks, and then around them the fenders from the Syndicate faction. So that is the Cohere and Suniat. Once again, presuming I'm pronouncing them correctly, which I'm probably not. But in any case, combined with the APZ parts to give a nice flat look, with of course the fenders hugging the ends of the tracks. So very nice clean look in any case, and that was what I was trying to replicate here. So this video ended before I felt like the build was entirely complete, so I am basically showcasing the rest of the build as it is finished now, which I did end up doing off camera. But in any case, this is what the build started with. So again, it didn't have any sort of direct protection on top or around the armor tracks. Just by nature of there being 4 armored tracks, there wasn't really a whole lot of concerns with it actually being damaged. And in fact, I do actually have a pertinent screenshot about that, which will probably be the wrong image. Yeah. There it is. So this is showing, oh, if it lets me move it over to the right screen, there we go. So this is showing in a raid, the heavy, or rather a variant of it. In this case, it's using 3 tacklers and an Aurora for the daily machine gun challenge. MID, this was a little while ago. This isn't new. This was, yeah, July 11th. So a ways ago now. But in any case, it's still running the same configuration as the current build on screen as far as the vertical giggle, as well as these really thick side panels and the unarmored armor tracks. So in this case, what happened is the front pair of armored tracks were actually blown off by an enemy, and it just ended up having the 2 rear armored tracks. Now, because of the placement of the armor and weapons, it actually, or rather module and weapons, it actually still kind of functioned, other than the obvious very forward top heaviness of it. And this has only happened once, at least to my recollection, of actually losing the front tracks like that. But in any case, it's just, I think, indicative of the fact that the armor tracks don't really need more armor. It was more of a stylistic choice after, like I said, seeing the inspiration to go ahead and change this. So the finished product as it currently were, in any case, is not that one. That is another build to go over. Is looking like this. So I did change a couple of things of it, even compared to just the earlier demonstration in the other video. So I did end up shifting the cabin up significantly. So what that ended up allowing me to do is center the elephants in the middle of the build, which allows them to have equal gun depression all the way around the build. So while it was not a hindrance in the prior build, having the cannon and cabin so far back, just not only for an aesthetic but slightly as a functional purpose, having them moved up into the middle is a little bit easier for being able to engage with things on all sides. So as a result of that, I did have a significantly decreased front nose, or in front of cabin space, for actually allowing me to put armor. I did end up with this double train plow design. I did try a couple of other ones, but it's very hard to get one that I kind of found acceptable. So I ended up coming to the conclusion very early on that I wanted the coheres to kind of flow into the front small plows. Now in the other build, I had them upside down, so once I just had the coheres in place, it was a very obvious move to just include those, as it gives it a nice sleek look. Now my biggest problem after deciding on that was sort of figuring out what would sort of flow in between this train plow, which is obviously good for a lot of durability, without breaking up the shape. And of course it is a little bit difficult because you do already have this this undercutting of the side with the train plow. I ended up with the other decision of the train plow because I felt like it worked best, not only aesthetically, but also functionally. So I had at point been playing around with using the APC hard modules again. But due to their 1.5 pip length here, again, I didn't feel like it fit as well. So if I even just cut these, you can see it still kind of breaks up the shape a bit, especially not meshing very well with the coheres again. And then you do have, again, a little bit of an undercut with the train plow sort of tapering off, and then the APC hard module being thick again. Now, while this isn't completely unworkable in and of itself, it's also significantly less durability than using another train plow, so while it's also a lot lighter, it's only about half the durability as a train plow, despite taking up approximately the same space. So functionally, this ends up being a little bit more useful, I think. Another factor is I didn't really like this overlap here with the train plow on the other one, although it's not terribly obvious from the front. That was part of the decision made after looking at the original Heavy again, which had it going all the way to the roof of the cabin. Because while I had not noticed it being explicitly a problem in combat, you do actually have it blocking the rotation of the turrets a little bit. So once again, not really a big issue I was noticing or running into, but I was trying to limit this sort of extreme gun depression being blocked by armor parts, which is something I try and do on most of my builds in any case. So as a result, I know I didn't want to make the train plow any higher or even that same height. So while, for instance, I could have done that, I didn't like how, once again, it breaks the flow of the side, and then it's also going to block the weapons. So as a result of having this weird, slightly overlapping train plow shape, it's very hard to armor this front area. I did just end up doing a APC roof part, so the traditional 4x8, and then two 2x8s from the APC side parts. So while there's definitely some, more I'd like to do with this area, theoretically I could use the APC bumper parts, which are a lot more dense despite taking up the same shape as these two. I just felt like it didn't really fit as well, and once again it was bumpers connecting bumpers, which kind of gets, I think, a little bit less effective, because then you're looking at an extremely high amount of durability only from one direction, but you aren't actually increasing your overall total, or your overall vehicle / cabin health durability. And I want to kind of, use a good blend where I can, especially because if I did have bumpers there, it's very possible that these train plows would get blown off, but then those bumpers would remain due to the cabin being primarily exposed after that point. So I figured this was, a good compromise. The train plows are enormous and great at soaking shots, especially from projectiles and other explosives, just due to the nature of them being large and very durable as a single part, without risking having multiple parts take damage, again, due to their size. And, for the sake of especially fighting most bots head-on, you aren't really going to be running into a lot of situations where you have, train plows not be one of the most effective things to slap on the build. So that's kind of explaining the front shape of the build. Like I said, a lot of it just kind of hinged on my personal decision of moving the elephant cannons up and having them centered, but I feel like overall I really like the sort of the silhouette of this design now. So moving on to probably the most notable feature here is I have this kind of enormous pseudo turret block. It's the sort of thing where I think, if you cut off the nose of the cohort here, and then just had one large cannon in the center, it would almost give the impression that this entire section is meant to rotate. I did really like the sleek look of it as a result of just the conclusion of it, although it wasn't originally what I was going for. So looking back at the original Heavy again, it was all flat just due to the lack of having the over armor track protections directly. However, when I was looking at using the original recreation of it, I had the sloped parts connected, of course, to the cohere and the Sunyat, and then I had upside down APC hard modules. So that was trying to flesh out the width of the build at the top, since the elephants overhang a bit, without having it be a flat drop into a sharp area. So this kind of worked as a transitionary area where you had the very sharp 1 and 2 curve, or 1 and 2 slope of the cohere and the parts like that along the side, as well as being able to transition into a flat part on top of the APC piece here, this is the 2x1 with the flat part and then the slope, rather than the slope all the way through. And then this, of course, was lining up with the flat part of the APC hard module's top, and then giving sort of a hourglass shape from the front of the build. But this sort of didn't lend itself well, I don't think, because you did have a bit of overlap with these pieces. It does expose this entire side part without, really doing a good job of protecting it or doing a good transition from the, I think, slope into a vertical flat piece. And overall, it also didn't even do anything for protecting the elephants, or rather making them seem more connected. There's still an overlap, and I think probably part of the largest reason why I got rid of it is there's really no good transitionary piece going from this 2x2, well, it's kind of like a 2x2.5 due to the slope piece, and then blending it into the side, especially when you had, again, this area that was connecting sharply directly against the cabin. There isn't really a piece that's good at transitioning that into something flat, or even something, with a slope, to try and maintain the overall shape. So I ended up getting rid of those entirely on the side and just going with the view here. So I ended up kind of coming to the conclusion that the slope parts, being obviously sharp and flat, the tank side parts here, would work well with another sharp part upside down. Kind of like that, but it just ran into this situation very quickly of still, I don't really have a good way to corner off those pieces if I did go that route. So the slopes were kind of an obvious one, because between the Avia struts here and the crane plugs, we do actually have a couple of pieces that actually work really well for rounding out corners that aren't just extreme slants, like the tank side part would require. So after having the more rounded shape there, I just followed that up to the roof, which of course is flat, and then it was just a matter of filling in the middle piece, which is very easily the APC side part again. So it has windows there. Yeah, I think it kind of built itself as the shape pretty easily. You do still have a small bit of overhang from the turret cannons, but I don't think it's nearly as noticeable, especially because you do kind of get the silhouette curving up to the outer edges of the elephant anyway. It's kind of easy to not notice the fact that the base isn't all the way on, just due to the overall shape of the build here, as it sort of widens at the top. Did end up picking up a couple of decorative grills on the back. I did alternatively have my Lord of War pack parts used there, so I was looking at using the bandolier or the ammo belts. That being said, the restriction with both of those is that they're actually too deep, so you need this sort of slope at the top, because if anything is put there flat, it actually again got in the way of the weapon barrel ever so slightly. So it wasn't like a significant concern, but it just, again, me trying to get rid of it where feasible. So you can even see here at the very extreme corners of the build, the turret cannons are still blocked, but it's at the most extreme points, and I felt like that was a okay result, just because I did want to have that flat top appearance. I didn't really want to try and curve it in again at the top, which would allow me to be able to shoot over him. So this worked, and then obviously the grills kind of work. It's not exactly the buffer armor on like actual tanks or anything. I think it's called reactive armor tank. I don't know. I know they have them for like a functional defense reason, but in any case, it kind of works like that, just on the back. It doesn't break up the shape too badly, and this area also looked terrible when it was just bare and like this 90-degree sharp corner. So I feel like this does a good job of not only kind of keeping with the theme of the build and breaking up the shape, giving a more gentle transition, but it also lets me max out the decor, so that's great. So for the back part, I was really looking at keeping with the shape of the Suniet again. So as you can see, this is a significantly longer build as far as the actual armoring of it goes compared to the original, which had a large empty chunk at the back here. So I was able to flow all the way down to the back. So overall, really happy with the way this shaped up. I mean, it would have been, in my eyes, a little bit nicer if I could have just had this piece be one more forward, so that the corners kind of lined up and you had this sort of float to the end of it. But then you kind of had this gross 90-degree corner again, and just, you know, due to the way the entire length of the build works. So I didn't want to be able to push any of this stuff more forward. So this was kind of just the solution where I have this like 1x1x8 pip that's just flat, and then the actual transitionary piece, the APC rear, which I really don't use as much as I probably should for how delicious it looks, which then flows into the corner platforms, which are from the prior battle pass, which work really, really nicely here. I think it ties it together. It has that nice rounded edge at the back. It's sharper on the sides going all the way to the outside of the tracks, but it isn't so round that it breaks up the rest of the angular shape of the build, I don't think. I do also have, this surprised me, I didn't expect it to be so looking at it, but the tank side part, so the 2-in-1 or 1-in-2 slope, depending on how you look at it, fit perfectly in between the Suniet. You could have probably gone with something flat, but again, I was trying to stick with the shape. The alternative option, like I said, if I did end up wanting to pull everything forward one, probably would have been to go with something like that, but again, I didn't like these little wings getting cut off at the end. So my solution was just to work with it. The remaining space that we had underneath was kind of an odd sort of scenario, which I have kind of run in before. It's also something I talked about in the prior video, talking about the heavy-duty lead Stampede, which, funnily enough, I don't know if I re-uploaded it. Yeah. So I finished it, but didn't actually put it up. But talking about how difficult it is to find these 1-in-1 slope pieces, and in fact, in this one, I ended up with a 1-in-2 slope at the top of the tank, just due to the absolute lack of parts here with having a consistent 1-in-1 slope. So kind of ran into the same issue here in the back, where this is actually a 2x2 gap. And there's very, very limited amount of pieces that actually fit this. So the Dipper being the one I ended up going with, despite the extremely low, durability to mass ratio of it compared to something like the tank side parts, for instance. The low overall value, just because it really is the only thing that fits here. My alternative is, of course, to use the 2-in-1 slopes, or use a flat piece, or use a mixture of all of them, but this is sort of the solution that I came up with that I liked the best, because I mean, if you look at most of these, there isn't really a whole lot of other options for 1-in-1 slopes unless you again went with something rounded, which kind of breaks up the shape again, or just using a 1-in-1 or 2-in-1 slope overall. So, I mean, if anybody here has, an ear of the dev or so, that'd be another cool thing to look at adding more of is, I guess 2x2 pieces that have a consistent slope all the way through. So a 1-in-1 slope on a 2x2 piece, I guess. So more pieces like the Dipper, which are a little bit tougher. So, you see a lot of 1-in-4, 1-in-1, or 1-in-4 and 1-in-2 slopes, with 1-in-2 slope being the most popular by far. but with the 1-in-1, very, very, very limited. Like the hard module has them a little bit, the strength and slope has it a little bit, and the APC bumpers have them a little bit. And otherwise, you're looking at like, you know, concave parts or parts with maybe a little bit of a 1-in-1 slope, but aren't the primary silhouette of it. You're very restricted otherwise. So, like I said, that's kind of just the shape I came with. All of the frames underneath are light, just due to the mass constraints working with. As you can see here, it is like on the very edge of being over tonnage, and as you could probably tell from earlier looks with me taking off parts to move stuff around, actually it's completely hollow in most areas. So I ended up having not a whole lot of mass left once I had these very large, heavy armor panels that were, you know, now being decoratively added to the outside of the build rather than the very square maximum sort of mass for area, or volume rather, building that is doing with the prior variant. So as a result, yeah, lots of empty areas. I would like to, you know, in the future be able to add more and obviously make it more well armored, add more health overall, but that would require refusing the cabin here. As a result of it being given out from the battle pass, it has this not for crafting tag, which you can see, which means that you can't even use it with the guaranteed fuse blueprints for cohort. So for instance, another one came around that was minus mass plus maximum mass. I wouldn't be able to use this cohort for it. I need to make or acquire 2 other regular cohort cabins and then combine them together, and at which point I have 2 fused cohort cabins, which isn't ideal. Now it's sort of a aside, I guess you could say. There is a difference between regular fusing. So for instance, here's another example. This one is not for crafting, so you can upgrade it, which is fine. What you can't do is the crafting, where it gives you a specific fusion. So I know a lot of people have been salty about the difference between those, or rather the lack thereof, with the last couple of occasions they came out, most verbally during last present heist, due to the inability to use relics that you already fused, or, you know, got from other prior pre-fused situations, to upgrade stuff. So that's one of the restrictions of it. And I mean, like taking off mass of these cannons and these tracks, which of course be another rather benefiting factor, but cutting off 17% mass off of, you know, an elephant or 2 elephants or an armored track is really only like maybe one of these panels each. Like an APC roof bar, like 300 pounds. So you're not, or 300 kilos, you're not going to be able to fill up this area without fusing basically all of them, and I don't particularly care to fuse, like, well, everything here. Every epic part on the build basically, just for an additional like maybe 500 points of health. So in the meantime, it's just blank. I did end up swapping the vertical giggle, is something I was kind of really stubborn about letting go of. So I do have it as a Colossus here, as you can, it's under the left elephant there. You can see I was actually using the Colossus instead of the Geagle on this particular build, the original variant. Part of that was because at the time when it was built, the Colossus engine had the reload speed perk, and also just because this gap at the back of the build is only 6 high from frame level to cabin level. So, which is to say, I guess that the cohort cabin is, you know, 6 high. So if you want to have an engine, in this case the Geagle, which is 7 high, it's going to stick out. So originally I had it sticking out vertically with the tip between the 2 cannons at the back, and that was how I believe I ended it in the prior stream. But I kind of came to the conclusion, well, okay, well, I can also just do the tip down so it's flat underneath the cannons, which is obviously a bit more convenient for them being able to turn around, and just kind of build the frames around them instead. So that was something that basically took me 6 years to come to the conclusion to. But definitely a welcome one, because it's a hell of a lot easier. Just shoving shit into the frames and saying, okay, it'll look ugly down there, then trying to break up the shape at the top. So as a result, it uses a couple of frames that are key to the rest of the back of the build being attached. Once again, though, just due to the nature of this build, it's not actually terribly important that I keep all these rear parts. It's mostly for the aesthetic than actually needing, you know, 4 armored tracks and this entire back section of armor. So basically the entire back half of the build is redundant, but it looks good in the meantime. And then of course we have a bunch more frames up front here, just connecting the front tracks. As far as the other modules, so probably would have been a good thing to go over first with the module list. It doesn't actually use the Apollo engine for 1 additional energy, just once again mostly due to the tonnage restrictions. If I did have a spare energy on it, I would probably go and add a Doppler radar, once again just for convenience's sake in raids, not having to fight or like track down enemies, or you know, trying to scan the environment, always find where they're coming from. Basically having map hacks is very convenient there, especially with the amount of enemies that you're dealing with. In any case, the Apollo would also have been something that would have been another headache for fitting stuff, because if I did want to put it in like sort of a flat bed section here, like in a truck, then of course it's only 6 wide and 2 tall, whereas this is a 3x8 area, so it wouldn't fill it very nicely again. But the current shape of all the modules fitting together actually works pretty well, especially once again due to the corner platforms from the prior battle pass saving me a bit there. So I have the gas gen tucked underneath one of the, like, I don't know, you'd call them integrated fenders, nook or whatnot, of the cohort cabin, and then on the other side I have the radio on top of the 2 ammo packs there. I felt it unnecessary to have a additional like an expanded ammo pack. I didn't really feel like I needed the mass or the additional like 2 cannon shots or whatnot from it, so I just went with 2 fused ammo packs instead. The alternative would have been trying to find more space back here, or of course having it stick out below. One of the original designs that I had for this was using a cap here and expanded ammo crate. So if I mock it up, it was originally looking like this, and then I had the APC bumpers sort of clamped onto them. Like that. Now of course that means that they're still primarily exposed. There's only one piece actually protecting them, and if you have any sort of like AoE or, you know, somehow any explosive actually gets down here, like say a mine, those are probably popping. It also kind of compromises the integrity of the frames potentially by making them a lot more vulnerable, especially again if those explosives get popped. It would require me to use only a single frame in the center, or just get rid of it entirely, which means, you know, again I have less frames holding critical parts together, because then these front armor tracks are going to get popped off just if one frame goes. So yeah, found it suboptimal, and then of course the gas gen is very convenient for being able to carry an extra energy while being light, unlike the Apollo, and allowing me to keep as much parts for armor as possible. So, you know, maybe in the future if there's say a light 4 energy generator, I might look at swapping that out. One of the bigger frustrations with this is because the nooks on the cohort are 5 deep and the gas gen is 6 deep. It kind of sticks out, but I kind of just got around that because I have these other modules here, the flywheel for the reload and then the giggle for the movement speed of the build. It's sort of a whatever thing, just slap a couple more armor parts on, and of course everything's still buried with all these back armor pieces that I currently have and will hopefully have more of in the future if I ever rework this build, or if get, you know, some other inspiration, maybe fusing parts in order to make them lighter. But in any case, that seems to work pretty well for me. Again, I haven't been doing a whole lot of Crossout recently, or even playing with this build, but like I said, it's just an adaptation and like functionally identical to the earlier one, which I was using pretty heavily in raids, especially whenever my daily challenge was to get cannon wins. So, I mean, I don't suspect a whole lot of difference in, you know, performance, and it definitely looks a lot better than this original use. As far as like what we actually suffer from, I mean, you go from 3100 durability down to 2900, so not a significant loss there. Basically keep the same mass, and as a result of using the Geagle engine, you're able to go up to 65 kph. Due to uncapping the Geagle from, or the armor tracks rather, from 60 to 70. You could even theoretically slap hands in and go up to 70 kph if you want the full boost there. It would also give you a little bit more of an armor boost, putting you back up to almost the original durability we had before the rework. But I feel like the cannon benefits of Stone Deaf far outweigh it from here. So I mean, you'd only be going 5 kph faster, which is like, what, on a 65 kph build, like 8% faster, if that. And while you do get the cannon reload speed of 3%, of course the vehicle and movement part durability, you do lose a lot of cannon stats. So the 5% damage, the 5% blast radius, and the ammunition one piece are obviously together quite a bit of difference in damage that you can output. And then obviously you have a little bit more quality of life stuff with the turn speed, the convergence, and the durability of the cannons themselves. So either way, like, you have the option of using HUDs if you want to go ever so slightly faster and be ever so slightly tankier at the cost of more damage, but haven't personally felt like that was necessary either way. And yeah, as a result of the whole like armor thing being hollow, you likewise don't have anything protecting up here. But sort of a c'est la vie thing. Like, I mean, these cannons are attached directly to the cabin anyway, so it doesn't matter if you had any of these pieces or not. They're primarily just, you know, protecting these other interior pieces. And because, again, it's primarily PvE build, because I wouldn't want to bring, you know, Elephant's epic weaponry into 12,000 to 15,000 power score, where you're looking at multiple legendaries and relics on other people's vehicles. I won't want to bring them there anyway, so you're primarily fighting bots with this build. So it's not too much a worry about them attacking from like this specific angle or blowing up your modules or whatnot, because again, they're primarily aiming at the cabin and they're going to be kept in front of you. So yeah, I think works out a lot better aesthetically. Like I said, just very much maximizing, leaning into the sharp curves of the APC parts as per usual, and then having some of those rounded parts via the Avia and the containers, just to sort of round out and, you know, maybe to a certain degree echo the overall shape of the fenders from the Sunyat and the Kohi. So yeah, I will be probably smart to end this stream, and then I'll make another one talking about the other build I was looking at doing. Which actually was shown slightly early in the stream because I forgot to replay this garage vehicle. So I'm just going to grab a drink after this, because obviously talking is